I should get some of mine hot ones. You said there's something can after as well.
So I made it press down screen. I didn't think they had an old yeah.
Fortunately, it was controlled on. I think it's something on the buttons. Yes. Oh, that's weird. Okay, go on.
The dance around it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Oh, I always give you. I'm doing it. Work.
You just tell Frida we should press some buttons. Is that
Yeah.
We're live now.
Okay, thank you, Fee. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Herefordshire Worcestershire Health and Care Trust Board in public. We are broadcasting live on YouTube this morning, and so welcome to guests either online or viewing. And as I always say at the beginning of these meetings, if anybody has any questions about proceedings today or specifics, then anybody around the table can be contacted in a normal email manner to have a conversation if they need any points of clarification. We have some apologies today from our Director of Finance, Deputy Executive Robert Mackey, who's unable to be with us for personal reasons, and similarly with Vina, our Executive Director, Vina Alston, who again for personal reasons is unable to be with us. So, colleagues, if we could move to the minutes of meeting held on the 15th of May this year, and ask for any comments and or matters of accuracy that wish to be raised. Okay, that's in. And again, thank you to Jill and the team for producing those minutes again. It's excellent as always, thank you. We can then move to the action log. With anything to be said about these, all the comments are in the outcome column there, and they're all complete or in mid-action. But does anybody have any points of clarifications or questions on them? No? Okay, can we take those as noted, please? Any matters arising that have come up from the minutes, which then takes us to questions from members of the public. And we do have a question from a member of the public this time around. So, Jill?
Yep. So it's a question from Nee Wallace-Davis, who's Business Development Director at IESO, and has asked, whilst recognising that there is great work going on in talking therapist service on the waiting time for access to service and recovering from the loss of staff in recent years, nationally published data shows that for May, 81% of patients waited over 28 days from assessment to treatment. 49% waited over 90 days. The overall trend in the last 12 months, especially the 90-day waits, increased from 33% to 49%, with November 2024 and March 2025 showing 63% and 65% respectively. Are there any plans in place to support the service with improving those waits to treatment? And is the Trust open to support from national providers of talking therapies to address waiting times? And the answer is, thank you for the question. The growth in the 90-day wait to treatment has been as a result of temporarily directing increased resource to assessment to respond to arising referrals and longer therapy courses for a cohort of more complex patients. We have a recovery plan for improving 90-day waits and are monitoring this through trust committees. We have worked with national providers previously to help deliver waiting time improvements, and although we remain open to this option, we have no current plans to pursue this.
Thank you, Jill. If we move on then, declaration of interest, a normal reminder, our declaration of interest are on the website. Remind everybody if anything changes, then either inform and also consult Jill with regard to that, who will be always available to advise. The next item on the agenda today, item 8, is our patient's story. And we're joined by a guest on the screen, Chris, who I'm sure Natalie will introduce in a moment. So I think the easiest thing is to hand over to Natalie. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So really delighted to introduce this month's patient story. We celebrated International Learning Disability Week last month, and on the back of that I contacted Chris, who is a clinical lead in one of our Herefordshire teams, and I'm really pleased he's going to be able to talk to us about his service, and he has a video that we're all hoping is going to work that shows him talking to the family that he's been working with about their experiences. So thank you, Chris. I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and play the video when you're ready.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Natalie. So my name is Chris Tracy. I'm the clinical lead for the intensive support team in Hereford. We're a small team. There's only 2 of us, both learning disability nurses, and we. The idea of our team is to prevent people being admitted to inpatient hospital or placement breakdown, really. So the video I've got is quite a nice piece about someone who we've helped, a family and an individual who hopefully the video will do the talking. I'll try and play it now. Can you see that, everyone?
Yes.
Right. Hello both. Thanks for joining me on this call. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be really helpful.
Hello, hi. We're Brian and Michelle Rogers, and we have a son named Joe who has autism and a learning difficulty.
Brilliant. Would you like to tell us a bit about why Joe came to IST?
Yes, well, Joe, he's extremely vulnerable.
It became to the point where we were struggling
Yeah.
to cope with his troubles. So you in particular, Chris, got involved with us and started working with us and Joe. Because things were so difficult, Joe's diagnosis of ASD, etc., and his vulnerabilities. So, and in particular, work within the community.
Yeah, I think when you started working with us, Chris, Joe was, living at home with us. Things were very difficult, and we were really struggling to support him. We had. Yeah, as I said, he's a very vulnerable young person, and there were lots of problems out in the community where he was targeted, harassed and exploited by various people and youths. We've had lots of incidents and
Lots of police involvement.
Yeah, and lots of
Paramedics.
Lots of times where he's been, we've had incidents where he's been assaulted, stolen from, scammed, catfished, to name only a few, really. And it was a very tough time, wasn't it?
Very traumatic for Joe, and in turn traumatic for us and the whole family, not just us, but at the time grandparents.
Well, for everybody and friends, it's had an effect on everyone. And there's been lots of traumas where he's gone missing and threatened to take his own life, and put himself into dangerous situations. and we've had to get the police out. Oh, you know, at one time it was weekly, and you know, we just didn't know where to turn. Really, it was very difficult. It really was.
IST have completed positive behavioural support plans, hospital passports, reactive strategies, all of that's the sort of formal stuff that IST have done for yourselves. Could you describe what IST have done that wasn't quite in that structure?
Well, I think when IST started working, you know, with Joe and us, it was a much welcome support. It really was, because we didn't know which way to turn. We really didn't.
I mean, initially in the early days, it was because Joe was difficult to engage with, but for Shelley and I, on a personal level, it was support for us, and it felt good to just talk to somebody about Joe and the issues. But we felt it was good for us to have talk to that yourself, that you understood.
A lot of support. No, and you know, I think you visited regularly, Chris. You know, and you've always made yourself available, or tried to. You know when needed, either in person or on the phone. Really, I've had a lot of long conversations with you. So you've always been there to support and talk things through. You know, as Brian said, not just for Joe but for us also. You know,
I think that's really important. This whole family
that
are supported.
Yeah.
Although it's there for Joe, it's a whole family thing.
Yeah. And also, you know, you've consulted other professionals, you know, to get their input as well when we have needed it, and that's been really valuable. You know, and you've organised other professionals to work with Joe, and you've accompanied them on visits to see him, and you know, which has really been really helpful, hasn't it?
It felt like to us that you've gone beyond the promises of your role, sort of thing, which is an amazing service.
Right.
I've always said all the meetings that we've had, you know, how much we appreciate that help from yourself.
Yeah.
Well, it is. I mean, you know. Yeah, IST is, you know, supported medical appointments and, you know, putting together a hospital passport, for example, you know, and, you know, when he has had hospital appointments, you know, ensuring that they have made reasonable adjustments for him there, which was very important, because Joe's anxieties are so high that he's frightened, you know, of, you know, doctors and hospitals and any sort of medical intervention. So you really helped, you know, with that to try and make things as easy as possible for him, you know, which is a huge help, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if you weren't there, things would be totally different today.
Yeah.
So it's without you being there.
Oh yeah, it's made a
can't imagine.
Huge difference.
Well,
yeah.
We couldn't have coped. It would have been a whole family issue rather than the Joe issue. So
yeah, that's really nice to hear. Can you describe how Joe is now, where he is now? What's, you know, he was living at home. Where's home now for him?
Well, yeah, I mean, when it became unsustainable, really, for Joe to continue living at home, IST, I think, were paramount in helping find a suitable supported living service for Joe to move into. That was.
We did
so well to make sure that it was the right setting for Joe, and that it would suit him, because there were so many different places out there. You know, it's hard to know where to start, what would have been the best service for him. But you know Joe, and you know you found the best service for him, which is great. And I think, you know, you've been supportive all the way through the transition of Joe moving into supported accommodation. You know, you really have. That was very difficult for all of us. It really, really was. You know, you've liaised with, you know, New Leaf, when there's been problems, and you've helped to solve them as well. And there were a lot of hurdles and hiccups right at the beginning, and there still are, some, and you're still there, helping try and solve these, which has been great. We're trying, as well, but it's just great to have the support there.
For you, Chris, to step in and kind of take that, right, we're going to find you someone. I think you could see as a family we're at a breaking point.
Yeah.
So I think for you to step in and say, right, whatever meetings you had internally, right, we need to support this family. You've taken that role magnificently, and you've dealt with New Leaf. You've helped with the transition to Joe, who's now in supported accommodation.
Yeah.
That's going remarkably well, considering where he's came from the early days.
Yeah.
When you started working with him.
Yeah. Well, I think the transition was difficult, for all of us, as well as Joe. And there were many times I questioned if we'd done the right thing. As you know, we had many conversations about, he wants to come home, what do I do? Pulling at the heartstrings. It was very difficult because, letting him go was huge, and him being away from us was huge. And to him, it was such a difficult time, and we really did question: have we done the right thing here? But talking it through with you really helped us to be realistic about it. It really did. That we had to make the right decision, and it took us a long time to get there, because we hung on, and it was becoming more and more unsustainable for all of us to do. But we got there.
To be aware of your own vulnerability, looking after somebody like Joe, is hard. So I see in yourself, Chris, you've guided us through that and made us realise this is a good thing for Joe. So with that support in the background there,
I don't think we could have done it actually without.
No way could we have done it on our own.
No.
But recognising our vulnerability, and you kind of, in a really nice way, highlighting our vulnerability and putting things in place, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's really helped.
Amazing, and it's for future. It's a lot brighter, and I'm very positive.
Yes, yeah.
About the future.
Thanks, Chris. And I'm sure there'll be. Do you want me to carry on?
If you want to, and if everybody could introduce themselves to Chris when they ask a question, so they know who you are. Thank you, Natalie.
So we'll have now use yellow hands, so we offer green hands. So come to us. So Janet, thank you.
Thank you for that, Chris. I thought that was really interesting. And when I was listening to parents talking, I was thinking, goodness me, this is very intensive. And then I realised, actually, that's the name of your team, isn't it? So that's actually your raising veteran is to all that support in. So I've got two questions. One of those was about the resources available to you, because this does feel very labour intensive to me. So I think we'd all be interested to hear about the resources in your team and whether you think that's enough. And I'd be really interested to know how many people you support. So that was the first question. If I'm allowed, can I have two?
Can you tell Chris who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I've jumped straight into questions. Right, so I'm Janet, and I'm one of the Trust non-exec directors. But I've got a clinical background, so I was a dentist. But I'm not going to ask about teeth. But my other question is a word we use a lot in dentistry, and that's actually I wanted to ask you about prevention, because I was quite sad to hear the state that the family and Joe were in when you started to give that support. So I just wondered about any reflections that you might have about how we as a trust could actually prevent families and people getting into the situation where they need that intensive support. So I'm sorry, that's two questions for the price of one.
Oh, that's fine. So resources. I mean, we're divided, I would say. So we have two different cohorts under our arm, really. So we have the learning disability and autism cohort, and they they're really quite lucky because they can access the CLDTs, any support that they've got. So we've got access to psychology, psychiatry, speech and language, OT, physio, all of that kind of comes with a packet as part of the package. So we can make referrals to them. It's really, it's really great MDT working, multidisciplinary team working. So that's great. The other half is autism only, and that's very much a different story, I would say, because we don't have the resources. If they're lucky enough to be open to the mental health teams, then we'd have their support, but often they're not open to them. They're autism only, so they don't have diagnosis of they don't have the mental health diagnosis, so we don't get we don't get any of the same level of support, which is a real issue. Prevention. Second part, it's we work with the Dynamic Support Pathway, who are run by the ICDP, and the Dynamic Support Pathway is supposed to be quite dynamic and rapid, but it isn't always. So there is problems there. I would like it to be faster and like us to be able to act in a faster way, but it's not always possible because things have to go down the right channels to get into IST. Really, they have to go through the Dynamic Support Pathway. There has to be a referral. There has to be a discussion. The discussion's only once a month, so it can be a bit of a challenge to get into us. Does that answer your questions?
It does, yeah. I've got lots of questions, but I think other people will have, so I'm going to hand over to them.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hi, my name is Elmi, Dr. Okonkwo, and I'm one of the associate non-executives. Can you hear me?
You're a bit quiet, but yeah, carry on.
Okay, I'll try to shout. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing, because listening to that is hearing parents that probably were at their wits' end by the time your team stepped in. And it's just making me kind of reflect. I don't know if it's a question that you can ask, because I think you've kind of touched on what I wanted to ask you, the fact that, they have to have a diagnosis to be able to access the service. Mm-hmm. And it just makes you wonder, because we have very, very long waiting lists for people to come to those diagnoses. Is there something about, you have a lot of resources, is there something about maybe hosting a site where we have those resources that the parents that are waiting to get the diagnosis might be able to access to get some support while they wait to get their diagnosis and actually get proper help? Because it's quite I have a GP background, so I get to see these parents, face to face a lot of times, and really a lot of them are struggling. But I just wondered if it might be something we might think about, hosting a site with resources that the parents can access. Do you have the capacity? Is this something worth doing?
When they get to us, they've got a diagnosis of a learning disability or autism. That's kind of where we sit. I think a lot of the things that we do, so we do a positive behavioural support plan, we do hospital passports. Some of them, could be accessed by families. Some of them I wouldn't want them to go off and do because they require, a positive behavioural support plan does require a level of understanding and expertise to complete, and it's a lot about management of behaviours. So I wouldn't particularly want them to do that. But things like we do a hospital passport and we do a autism profile, they might be useful for people to be able to see.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Hi, Chris. Sue Hinks. I'm an associate NED with the Trust. It was lovely to hear the accolades that that family paid you, and I'm sure that you have made a huge difference to their life, which I hope you were really pleased to hear about. One of the things we've talked about in the Trust in the past is when young people have specific difficulties up to 18, they might be well cared for, but when they go into adulthood, there is a problem with that transition. And I wondered if that's your experience, that actually the link between what's going on with young people up to 18 and what then happens sometimes gets broken.
Yes, we do have some younger individuals, sort of 18. They're all 18 plus, but there is definitely a gulf between children's services and adult services. Particularly the autistic population, they have access to CAMS and all of that support, and then all of a sudden they don't have anything. Sort of there is, you've got an autism diagnosis, and that's kind of that you fall between a lot of the gaps. So you fall between the mental health team, and they haven't got a learning disability, so they don't have that. It is a challenge, and we do, I'd love to be able to help everyone the same way I've helped Joe, but we are limited in our resources because there's only two of us. So yeah, children's services is a rich pool, and there's lots of things offered, and then when they come out, it's into adults, it's very much a different. Things have to be shared out, don't they? So it's not the same picture, unfortunately. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it would be nice to have had a. It's fine, but I expected to see you back here.
No, I wish.
Thanks, just looking around. No more questions.
I'll finish up if I may, Chris, Mark, Trust Chair. Quick question about referrals and first contact, if I may. Could you help me understand how your client cohort come to you in the first occasion? Because often within the NHS, access to services is perhaps a first issue for many members of the public and potential patients and clients to get over. Could you explain that to us, please?
So they, as I said, people have to be on the dynamic support pathway, which is held by the ICB, and there's a meeting once a month where people are judged either red, amber, or green. So obviously, red being the most risk and most likelihood to be admitted to an inpatient tier 2 bed. Amber is not quite as imminent, and green is there is some risk, but it's not. It's kind of manageable. So to get onto that dynamic support pathway, they have to have a referral from either a social worker or it could be from the CLDT or mental health teams, and it's kind of how they get onto that. Once they've been judged as amber or red, they then get access to IST. And red obviously is we've got a SOP that we've written that suggests that they should be seen within a week. Amber slightly less urgent, but we try and pick them up as soon as we can because we're obviously the intensive support team. We like to be proactive, and then we will do a thing called an initial assessment, which will hopefully identify what is needed, what would be helpful from our team, and that's quite a nice, robust document, and it looks at all sort of aspects of their life, and if it identifies that they need a PBS plan, positive behavioural support plan, then that's the route we go. If they're maybe if they're autistic and actually they need to have a better understanding of their autism, we would look to do an autism profile, which is something that I don't think all ISTs do, but we've kind of had to adapt because we've got this cohort of people. We've had to make a choice to try and be of value to that population. So that's kind of where we've got. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Natalie, for bringing this story forward. Chris, thank you so much for coming forward today and indeed bringing Joe and his parents and Joe's story to us. We have a patient story at the beginning of every public board meeting to ensure, for many reasons, but one of them is to ensure we're grounded in the reality of what our teams and what our staff and what our communities are, how they're receiving our services. And you've certainly done that today for us, so thank you. Please pass on our thanks to Joe and to Joe's family, please. And I hope you will focus on some of the words that Joe's parents used, because I think they were quite powerful. And I've made some notes of them here. If you weren't there, things would be different. Couldn't cope without you. It's about the whole family. And I think the one that really sticks in my mind, the comment, the future is brighter. And that's because of you and your team. I don't think there could be any greater accolade when dealing with some of the most vulnerable of our society, which is what you and your team do, than to hear from parents that their future and Joe's future is brighter because of your interventions and your assistance. So thank you ever so much. Please take our thanks back to the team. And as I reiterate, especially for Joe and the family, to allow their story to come forward to us in this public forum. Chris, thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Natalie. I think it's great we know that our learning disabilities cohort are some of the most vulnerable in society, and to understand how we as an organisation are assisting them is great to hear. Thank you very much. And you won't be surprised that Janet, for example, touched upon capacity, resource availability, because that touches on all our services, and it's something we also need to keep on. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now. Chief Executive report.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few things that I'm going to cover in my report today, and I won't go through every single thing because it's quite a long report, but I'm happy to take questions on any of the topics within it. But a few things just to pull out, and one thing I'll mention at the end, which is actually not on the report, which I just wanted to highlight as well for members. So some of the things we've covered, I'll start with things relating to our trust first of all. So we have had an unannounced visit by the CQC to Keith Winter House. That occurred on the 27th of May. I'm pleased to say that there was overall very positive feedback from the visit. So this was very reassuring, and there was positive feedback as well from patients and carers who fed back that they were involved in care planning and they felt their views were listened to and had lots of positive things to say about their experience. And I'd also pull out particularly that inspectors fed back that they felt that the interactions between patients and staff were warm, friendly and responsive, which is really all that we would hope for. There was some small concerns relating to some of the recording, and we have resolved that. We're working to resolve those, but overall the report is hugely positive, and we'll obviously take that through our internal governance. I've also got a couple of good news stories around awards. So we had an award for the Orchard Service in North Worcestershire, Meadow Ward, who actually won the award that they were shortlisted for, so that was fantastic. And also recognition for our community learning disabilities team. So that's really great to have those positive news stories as well, and recognition for our teams. As we've mentioned, we also had Learning Disability Week, and we've had that focus in today on a story about our learning disability services. I think there were some great events held over that week with a theme of Do You See Me, about families being seen, heard and valued. So that was a success as well to share. It was also National Estates and Facilities Days. There are quite a lot of national days for things, but we do like to celebrate each year we can. And we took a moment to recognise and celebrate the work of our teams, who do so much actually to keep us all safe in functional spaces, and our environments are suitable for our patients and our colleagues every day. And finally, Armed Forces Week as well. And we are a bronze Armed Forces employer. I'm not sure at the moment actually what it takes to be silver or gold, but maybe that's something we could look at. So we do have an Armed Forces staff network who are active,
and support people who are actually veterans, reservists, or have a family connection to the armed forces in our service. Moving on to things in the kind of local system. So we have prevention called out to the mental health, and we were welcomed as a called out signatory. I think, again, the important thing here is it's actually about recognising the good work at a system between partners collaborating to support people with mental health across the system. And there was recognition of some of the innovative solutions that we've got, including things like the Luminova work in partnership with our services. So we also have a mention here around some of the local authority reorganisation proposals, and we're staying close to that. Mark and myself have both been involved in sort of system conversations about that, and we'll kind of keep agreed. Finally, on to a bit of the national news. So, of course, everyone will be well aware that the 10-year plan has finally been published since we last met, and we have some dedicated time in our development session later for board members to spend a bit of time focusing in on what that means for us. There is obviously a sense of pace and a focus on delivery, which we're just working through as well, and it will play a key role in shaping our new strategy, which we're developing and thinking about how we launch that probably at the November board, I think is our plan. In particular, the focus on neighbourhood health teams feels very relevant to us, as well as the use of digital tools, etc. So we will keep working that through, and we'll share more input about the implications here in our organisation over the next couple of years. We also had the new oversight framework shared with us, and that will be an important barometer by how our trust will be measured. We were advised at a national meeting that I attended that there will be published league tables, which will be available with relatively short order, but we'll wait until we don't have an exact date on that. A focus on more of that information being put in the public domain. There was a comment made by one of the national leaders that actually league tables exist, so we might as well own them ourselves in the NHS. So I think that was a sort of a feature of why they decided to go forward with the league table approach. Other thing to mention in national news is the new urgent and emergency care plan. That was published on the 6th of June. We're working through the implications of that. There is a winter planning framework assurance document that we will probably bring to the September board. It has some specific questions for mental health, as well as the assurance questions around the wider UEC portfolio. But what I would say is, with the focus again, some of the national messages about more local freedoms, less direction around how we plan our business, there are approximately half the number of assurance questions that there were last year. So I think it's a kind of reduced framework, but gives us a bit more freedom to think about how we're going to respond locally. So we welcome that, I think. There's also been publication of the RES data, the Workforce Race Equality Standard. It is published annually, as you will be aware, and we're working through ourselves the implications for this organisation, and we'll take that through our People Culture Committee. Last couple of things was to mention is the ICB clustering. Important to note it's not merging, it's clustering, but that is now been announced, and it is agreed that there will be 42 organisations moving to 27 clusters, although some are actually retaining their original footprint. So there is an announcement now that our own ICB, Herefordshire ICB, will be clustered with Coventry and Warwick ICB. So they will have one team running across that larger patch, but they won't fully merge at this point in time. We don't see that it will make a significant impact on our day-to-day running, but obviously that is still to be worked through, and we don't have all the detail as yet. Then finally, there was Commissioner guidance for community mental health rehabilitation services published on the 9th of June. So we are working that through. This is something we already had under review anyway, our rehabilitation models. So we will continue to take that forward. The final other thing that I just wanted to mention, which is not in the report, is that I'm sure that colleagues will be aware to see that there has been a new strike action announced by the BMA. So having consulted with those who led this organisation previously, I am assured that processes worked well. We were able to continue robustly delivering all of our services. I think the implications are financial rather than operational that we need to consider. But obviously, we've dusted off those plans. Matthew's taken it through relevant groups. John has also had a look at this. And I feel that we are ready should we need to respond. But obviously, we remain blind to what's happening in the kind of national discourse on this issue. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Questions from anybody? Sue?
It's less a question, more a comment. It's lovely to see all that good news at the start of your report. So congratulations to all the staff who were honoured in different ways.
Nobody else sure, but I think I did nod towards Sue, and the question that Ellen asked, what do we need to do to get to silver? If I could ask Sue to tell us that, because I know Sue's taking the lead on some of this now.
Lead on the board. So we're looking at the moment at the plan to get us to silver. I'm reviewing that with Janelle in September. So things like how to advertise, so the way that the our adverts go onto NHS jobs, and then the fast track process behind that for people who have got an armed forces background. We have to look at our policies, certainly around things like special leave and spousal arrangement, and then there has to be a real robust set of training that sits behind that, so that's very visible for managers. So previously we've had an action plan. We work then with our regional counterparts who are sitting in the armed forces community. They will help us look at where we need to strengthen some of our processes and policies, and then we put the effort in. So I'm looking at all that in September.
And it's fair to say that there will also be, depending on scale, financial implications as well, because there's a level of time off to be given for various things as well. So there are financial. I had the privilege of collecting our bronze award with one of our veterans that works in the lane service, Wellman Kenny, to pick up the award. And working towards the silver is a good thing to do. It puts us in the mind, hopefully, of former military people to come and work for us, to see that we try our best to look after veterans, and we continue to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, and I echo that. It's actually quite good to see very good things happening. There's a big question about the strike, because my understanding, it's good that you mentioned it's operational, it's not going to affect the operation. Just an assurance that financially, because I know nationally they are not going to pay for it, they've said we have to find a solution. Just the assurance that we include things to do that and we're not on this.
So I don't know, but yes, it depends. Yes.
I think it's pretty low risk at the moment, but it is that lot.
Yeah, I think not knowing the scale, duration or frequency, it's hard to comment. I mean, we're in a good position overall financially, and obviously were there to be sustained action where we needed to pay for lots of additional staff, that would of course have an impact. But John?
Yes, the financial impact mostly not about on-call cover, and if we have someone is striking and they're on call, have to get others, and it's probably a different rate we pay for that. So within ours, I think we are in a way financially neutral.
Thank you.
I think until we have a bit more information, but yes, if it looked like it was going to be significant, it might be.
Thank you. Anybody else at all? And can I echo Oni's comments about the positive stuff? Having spent time with Smiths North on Medal Board and with the Hereford Learning Disabilities team, very, very well deserved. But they are, let's remember, they've been recognised. We have so many other services doing fantastic work as well. But that recognition is great to see. Thank you, Mel. If there's nothing else, can we note Ellen's report, please? Thank you very much indeed. And move on to the board assurance framework and a high-level risk register. Jill.
Thank you. I think we've probably now got the board assurance framework where I was hoping to get it in terms of actually clarity as to which strategic objectives we've got, what's the high-level risks relating to it, and what are the priority programmes that board has improved. I think it's fair to say, having got it in that position, we have done a little bit of retrofitting in terms of which are the priority programmes that are seeking to achieve the strategic objectives. And I think Sue and I have had a lot of conversations about actually when we're refreshing our strategy a bit later in the year, that we might just want to have a consideration about have we got the right strategic objectives. Because whilst some of them will probably remain, actually when you look at how we've got the priority programmes, we have a little bit of inconsistency as to how many priority programmes we have under each strategic objective, and whether actually we really have priority programmes that are delivering on particular strategic objectives. So I think that's for something that a bit later when we're thinking about our strategy and our strategic objectives. You know, I think we're in a position now where we have greater clarity. We have it's absolutely clear and the committee is responsible, and the milestones that they can review should then help them hold to account the senior responsible officers for each priority programme to know whether areas are on track, off track, need to be escalated or anything like that. So I'm hoping that the committees will start to find that much more useful to consider as to what needs to be brought or what might need to be escalated. I wasn't going to say anything else on the board assurance framework. We obviously have the high level risk register, and I know people will know that a lot of work goes on in the background in terms of support and challenge around risk to make sure that actually what we've got here are the highest level risks in the organisation, because historically we've sometimes had perhaps some operational risks that are not really at the level that should be coming to board. And I think we're getting there absolutely now with the risks that we've got, and the risks to achieving our strategic objectives, which are those at the highest level. The risks are there. Happy to answer any questions, or it might be that I need to ask colleagues to help. But that is the board assurance framework and the high level risk register.
Thank you, Joe. I've got Sue and Janet show, so if I take Sue first, please.
Okay, so the first thing is, as we made a lot of progress with articulating the way we set risks, and I think that was something we were told that we needed to do better. I just think the way 1573 is articulated is particularly helpful. So I just think it might be a good idea to look at that one. And then also I just wanted about the timing, because in 1518 and the difficulty of recruiting mental health nurses, in tab 11 we read that we might overcome this through recruiting nurses who are excess in the Black Country. So I just wondered whether actually what we learn in tab 11 means that 1518 is less of a problem, or whether the BAF overrides tab 11 and in fact we didn't manage to recruit those.
I'd probably defer to Elaine on the detail about the recruitment of the nurses.
Not me to say that.
Oh, sorry.
So we've got a positive opportunity in a couple of our neighbouring trusts, unfortunately for the student nurses, have students who will graduate in July and there are no local jobs for them. So we have reached out to those universities and we are going to host some open days and do spot recruitment. So if that comes into fruition, that will be a really positive move. At the moment, we haven't got those posts secured, people in post yet. So it's we're optimistic, but
Thank you, Natalie. It's the fingers crossed strategy. Let's hope it comes on. Janet.
Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment about the way the BAF has been presented. I mean, as a committee chair, I find this really tough. And I think, you and your team have done a lot of work on this. And I think it does make it very clear to us as a board the link between the strategic objectives and the priority programmes. If we think the strategic objectives are right, then actually we do need to look really carefully at our priority programmes. Because in some areas we have gaps, undoubtedly. But it also, we may be doing things, we may have to look at what we don't do so that we can actually start doing things in the right area. And so I think this has made it really clear to us, and I'm really happy that you've done that work. So I just wanted to really make that comment.
Thank you, Kevin. Nobody else is showing. Sorry, Colin. I'll just Colin.
Link entered. It's just really an observation that I think I agree with colleagues that this is a significant step forward. And I'm going from memory here, Jill, so correct me if I've missed it, but in the performance management framework, which we will be considering later, there is reference to that, but I wondered if you feel it's strong enough to make sure that to look at contemporaneously.
I think what I'd probably say is the performance management framework should be one of the things in terms of if things are off track or we need recovery plans, actually how we then escalating that potentially up to the BAF where it is impacting. And so it might be a conversation that we need to have with committee chairs about having that front and centre when there are discussions about metrics through the performance management framework to the responsibility of each committee as to actually, are we so concerned about something that should be escalated through to the BAF? And so it's perhaps something that I just need to do a little bit of a briefing about, explicitly thinking about that to committee chairs. Useful point, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are being asked to approve the BAF as it stands now. Can we approve somebody coming in or leaving? Somebody. Okay, so we consider that yes, approved, please. I remind colleagues that at the end of the meeting we will revisit if there's anything they have heard today, seen today, they think should be escalated or considered for the BAF. And I'll throw one in now because otherwise I'll forget by the end of it. But the industrial action that we're in the start of, obviously, depending on how it goes and whether it escalates or gets wider, I think we need to consider how that may affect the achievement of our strategic objectives. So perhaps it's a sort of a park and wait and see, and executives keep on top of how that could. So I made that one now. But if anything else comes up, we will revisit. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Sue, strategy and partnership, priority programme update, please.
Yes, so obviously following on from the conversation we've just had about the new layout, this is also looking a little different. Hopefully it is something which falls through the alert to us as a board very clearly. So we've now got 13 priorities we signed off last public board meeting, they've signed to committees, and then the committees then assigned the assurance levels. So all I was going to call out today then was the alerts that you can see. So we put them against alert, advise, assure and achievement. You just move to the first set of alerts. They sit around agency and back usage, and that relates to ensuring that we close our temporary boarding and the surge capacity. That's also given an alert under our Community Hospitals Length of Stay project. I'm just pleased to say that's all on track. Matthew can board members want that. But that's all on track to close by the end of the month. There's also under the agency some issues being raised around the terms and conditions of locums, and again I'm sure John will provide them. If we go to the community hospitals to say that surge capacity is the key issue sitting there, and then what the out of area placements for mental health and about 60 days reducing length of stay, that is not going as planned at the moment. We've got daily sit reps, and there's a lot of activity happening in the space. We're doing really well with out-of-area placements. It's just this longer tail end length of stay. So some activity running into the work programme around strengthening our approach there and really doing a little bit of PDSA, because we've managed to do the shorter lengths of stay and get some real traction and progress. So we need to better understand what we need to do differently with the over 60 days length of stay, which is where we've got the issues. Children and young people. You'll know we've got ongoing ambiguity still about exactly what the scope of the programme is and what our focus is and how that sits in the system space. We've done a lot of work over the last few weeks with our clinical colleagues in the SDU, and there's a meeting next week with the ICB to walk through really a sort of medium to longer term position and to reframe in particular how we might work with the neurodivergent pathway, and very much looking to quite a different approach, much more dynamic potentially than the one that we're working to at the moment. So that would really then help in the longer term with the sustainability of community paediatrics. And then finally, I just wanted to pick up the rehabilitation redesign. So there's an alert there around just making sure board members are aware of the timelines. There was a stage 1 meeting with NHS England, so that's part of the strategic service change process we're working in, and that is by the end of the month, and myself both attending that. We can expect that to focus very much on process to date. The documentation we've already sent over, very comprehensive. They didn't have any queries around that, and then they'll want to understand the onward process around the options appraisal and formal consultation, which we obviously work through in detail, and that's all available for them. So I don't think I envisage any problems in that particular. So those are the alerts, and I'm happy to take any questions and field out to colleagues that are needed.
Thank you, Sue. Janet and then Colin, please.
I thought it was about length of stay, and it was a question I wanted to ask, so I think I'll ask it here just because it's the first time it's appeared really. Because I was a bit concerned about that, given that we're now in July, so time is moving on, isn't it? So my question, and you've covered a bit about what's happening, but I suppose it was really to think about what the impact was going to be, and the trajectory for how we are going to be stay, because I'm just looking forward in the papers, and obviously quite a bit of our savings plan was reducing length of stay, and I noticed we're underachieving on that, which is what you'd expect really. So I suppose I'm after assurance that actually we are going to be able to deliver this, and we are going to be able to make savings, and the fact that maybe we've got a plan B.
So with the community physical health community hospital length of stay programme, we are set the 7-day rolling average around average length of stay for discharge patients. That's the measure we're working on. We see ourselves as being targeted 27 days by the end of June, 25 days by the end of September, and 23 days for March 2026. The 7-day rolling average is now oscillating between about 24.5 days and 26.5 days, so we're ahead of target on that one. The surge capacity, that's the other critical part here, we're down to 4 beds open at the moment. We're aiming to be out by the end of July. That's all on track, and the plan is to close those remaining 4 next week. So in terms of obviously appreciate the risk levels here are there, but actually we've made some good progress, so we're probably not as red as perhaps indicated in the paper there. So both length of stay and removal of surge capacity is on track.
Before I come to Colin, I think Natalie wishes to add to this.
I'm just wondering, as Janet asked about the mental health thing, yes, I feel sorry, it's not the physical health care, it's yes, I was going to pick up whether it was both, because both are linked to the savings plan. I mean, that's quite clear in the paper. There's a lot of interdependencies that sit across the programmes. Jill's point about which strategic priority you put them under. So, John, do you want to pick up the work around adult mental health length of stay?
Yeah, we are ahead of target on
the over 60 days is the issue that was flagged in the paper.
Well, we've got patients with longer length of stay, but and as and when they get discharged, then obviously will skew the average length of stay, because there are several reasons why we have long stays in our acute beds. Some of them should really be in a level 2 rehabilitation bed, so we are making sure that those appropriate referrals go in time to the ICB so that they can access the right bed rather than be in this bed. There are a few things related to delayed discharges, so we have around, and that essentially is around the availability of housing and support for the individuals to get discharged. We are undertaking some exec-led panel meetings where we go in to unblock those barriers and enhance those. So there's quite a bit of system and processes in place. But if you look at the average length of stay at the moment, we're aiming for 35 and we are achieving around 31 now. But bearing in mind that we really need to look at the median then the stay loan had been because they were given by the long stay has been discharged.
And I noticed, I think the papers set out some long stayers, don't they, for information. Okay, on that one, thank you, Kevin. Colin.
I think it's fair to remark that we're making a lot of progress in terms of putting milestones and benchmarks. But I'm never satisfied, I'm afraid. I'm just looking at the report, as an overview level. The board is now asked to note the progress being made. And I find that quite difficult. Visually, it looks as though quite a number of the assurance levels are about the same. We are making some progress. So it would be helpful, I think, if we could get some kind of key into the detailed report, which says, don't worry about the following areas, we're okay, but we're really worried about coming with a bit of a discussion about the following, so that we're able to, as in the sort of the insightful board, really scrutinise the areas that are most important and not relax about, but less scrutiny for the areas where you're assuring us that we're making sense. A bit of a ramble, but I hope.
No, well, I think as you say, we're all on a journey of putting this together, aren't we? Sorry. So my thinking is the same, actually, that we had our first run through committees with the milestones, and that's assurance really about where things are drifting, and as a board we might need to do is take a dive, and those are the areas that need to come through in the report. So I'm with you, Colin. I think there's in the next cycle there'll be more focus on the progress made, sitting committee, and then the area specification committee.
If I may add to Colin's point, something I was going to pick up, and I think I'm predominantly looking at my non-executive chair colleagues. When I read the overview of the report, it looks like on assurance levels, to look at them all through the report, you go, it doesn't seem like much is happening. Whereas actually, we know full well there's a huge amount of activity and actually, as we've just heard, positive progress. Now, I know on occasions we can be very reticent to move assurance levels unless it's absolutely embedded as suggested. But I think my non-executive colleagues may wish to consider that in future, because it's not quite reflective, I think, of the huge amount of work that Alan's team and others are putting in. So just a mind's eye, please. Okay, can we, as Colin highlighted, can we note Sue's report, please? Okay, thank you, Sue. And if this comes in a three-prong attack almost in terms of strategy and partnerships, and then we move on to Matthew's operational update, which outlines what's going on then.
Not to the share priority action plan then. Ongoing oversight of children and young people services implemented on CQC, Department for Education and NHS England together. There's some areas of good progress in transformation, so beginning to yield results. We contributed to a deep dive inspection in June of the education, and the report genuinely gave positive feedback about the quality and timeliness of educational healthcare plan. And that's backed by our improvement to 100% completion of the health evidence plans in time period during the day. Our therapies way to continue to improve the balance program. Weeks average now for new referrals for OT, and a significant reduction in points who's noticed them. So, really interesting. Codes referral to assessment times have so reduced considerably as a result of the improvement plan, reaching to an average of 8 weeks now. Challenges that are common to us and national to children. Children's needs, where they have neurodiversity challenges, and there's a large capacity gap still. We'll need to meet us next Tuesday to discuss the solutions. And on to urgent emergency care. We develop our system-wide discharge plans. It's about patients who are leaving hospital on confident pathways. And this month we commence our new approach, managing discharge complex pathways differently. Trust, not creating a single team. And the initial aim is for reduction in 2.3 days from the identification of the patient for complex pathway to then being discharged from hospital. Further benefits are anticipated to be like the new model out, using an agile improvement approach, looking at areas like early identification of patients with frailty needs and how we can use the outpatient beds in community hospitals. And you'll note in the report the overall improvement in front door UEC metrics. That's as a result of system-wide transformation in the use of emergency department pathways, better acute hospital flow subs, and proper programs of work that are taking place with key demonstrable results. We continue to deliver high volumes of timely intervention on UCRT, so 90% on 2 hours, and with a focus on those conditions which are most likely to cause generally older people to be a good focus on falls, frailty, end of life, those things. Also this month we're anticipating the creation of the first tables for UCR, so benchmarking UCR timeliness and volumes across Asia, anticipating the system will be the capital time performer. Our system partners are working through closed temporary installation areas, so spaces, and currently as Scott has said, we've got 4 possible 23 open, and we plan to be out of those by the end of July. We've commenced the winter planning round. Our system plans will be submitted by the end of July to NHS England, and also draft trust level plans. So very, very short timeline, but these are the first draft plan to be submitted on the plan in progress. Note as well that the program variant is currently at 0. It's lasting 5 independent sector beds as part of the trajectory to be moving out of those by the end of October. That's a result of improving practices around purposeful admission and of the NHS 10 high.
Okay. Rather abrupt full stop there, Matthew. I have Onyi and then Sue, please. Oh.
Thanks. I just wanted to first of all commend what we're doing on the system. Really good progress that we've seen. One that actually boosts to that of the counts, going from 300 and something to 60. That's really. My question is around the right to choose, expanding. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because my understanding of right to choose then opens up things like private providers and make the cost spiral. But then we're saying we don't have the money, but then we're going to just speak a little bit.
It's an incredibly thorny issue, isn't it? So we know that in our system and most systems across England, there are a lot of children waiting for assessment for autism and ADHD. Right to choose is it's nationally available. You go to their GP and ask. The ICB are working plans to further develop right to choose in this area because they're not immediate other solutions available to the long waiters. So children families are starting to pick this up. One thing we've noted in the last few months is actually our ADHD and some referrals have actually started to slightly go down. We don't know if it's a trend, it's just a fluctuation, we're not sure. Some of that is related to a growing awareness of the ability of right to choose. It is incredibly expensive in the long run. It's more expensive to allow local right to choose than it is to invest in a sustainable service. These form part of the conversation which we're having with the ICB Tuesday. So we're having a conversation about what a sustainable long-term solution in Worcestershire would look like and what type of investment might be available, balances off into quickly allow people access to having a sustainable service for them. Those are quite early discussions at the moment.
And if I just add that I do know in general the right to choose, our ICB is considering in the wider sense the implications of right to choose, the financial and the various other. So that the children thing is part of a bigger picture, which I know the ICB is working.
Yeah, so my question is also about CAMS and the single point of access. So how will we know if maybe 6 weeks, 6 months down the line, that the people that originally contacted the single point of access have had appropriate?
So a lot of them, so there's a number of routes that are available to single point of access. One is directly through core CAMS services, and that might be for crisis intervention, roll back to another service. We're working with a new service provider at TN2 in Worcestershire at the moment, and we're looking at kind of data sharing arrangements. So we're aware of what inputs we're giving to the family. We don't have that information. We can see this. Honestly, this month, these are referrals that were inbound. These are the types of disposals that were given.
If the family doesn't feel that they've got where they need to be, can they come back to the
yes, they come back.
And will that be sorted? How many months does it work?
We don't do that at the moment. It's something we can do with the data that's available to us.
Colin and then Beach, please.
My questions on discharge, Matthew, and you referred to a new way of working as a single pathway team, and that seems to be making a positive impact over the years. But I wondered how the staff were involved in this new arrangement, people about perhaps talking about from different organisations.
How we agreed to work this is that we'll work as a single pathway. We discussed extensively the options around transferring staff between organisations. We decided collectively that it was probably more efficient in terms of mobilising more quickly, actually just design the pathway together. So the staff that are working in to the acute hospital trust now, they'll still remain working for us. They're still going to have the same line manager that they're working to. A standard operating procedure that runs across two organisations with an agreement between ourselves about operates. So we haven't had to transfer staff.
I think Ellen can offer some comment on that as well.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say a sort of more general point. I think with the future, as we're moving to APOS health and integration, we're going to talk about this in this afternoon, we are going to need to take a much more flexible approach. So people working in multidisciplinary teams, us working much more, as Matthew said, around standard operating protocols. In a sense, it doesn't really matter who's in charge of the team, as long as we can put the guidelines and the rules of the game set out clearly for everybody and the right governance in place. And actually what we heard really clearly from our colleagues in that team is that it was really important to them to stay working with patients. And they feel very supported here, which is credit to Matthew and his team and so on. So I think it's less about we need to sort of, if every time we need to do a piece of integrated work we felt we need to people, I think we could probably be having the wrong approach to what the future is going to look like. So it's going to be much more flexible and people moving between working in different multidisciplinary setups as we kind of embrace the concept of neighbourhood health. But what some of the learning shows from some of the early pilots, what is important there is that you have those standard operating protocols set out, you have the governance arrangements clear, you have the right vision, opportunity, action in case we use that kind of thing. And that's what I think we're going to learn from this programme. And I think what also is positive, what I would also add to Matthew's update, is that I think we were, a couple of months ago, perhaps it didn't feel fully aligned between ourselves and the Acute Trust. I think it feels really aligned now. We did a joint visit to another site It feels, great visit. People went on a day out together. All this stuff is really important about building that shared culture, which is our culture here in the Trust, yes, but also our shared system as well. So I think that's been really positive progress.
If I may, could I just clarify a little bit? I think that's really interesting, very helpful. I guess, not knowing anything about the detail of this, one of the potential obstacles in the future might be what happens about accountability and compliance. So it's fine when it's all going well.
And that's my point about the governance arrangements being clear, the standard operating protocol that you signed off, so that you have got alignment about what the expectations are and who's accountable for decisions that are taken. But there's still up to the line management of our
And I would add to that joint working, that cooperative working, integration, comes very much from the top of the organisations, in that Ellen works very closely with Stephen, the managing director, at the Acute Trust, between the two of you, making that clear to all the team. This is how we work together for the benefit of our patients. Certainly we're seeing some positive dividends there. Peach.
I think the answer to my question is probably right, but I'll ask a different question if I may. On UEC, great work so far. We've got more to do. I wonder whether you can comment, Matthew, on whether you think we've seen a peak in respect of demand, financial implications, not. What are we looking at across the next few months?
It's a very, very hard thing to predict. What we've seen for years is the growth in initiatives to keep people away from the front door. And we see the people using all of those different things. Same-day GP, UCR, paper teams, STEP areas. And what we don't see is a sustained reduction in what people actually go through the nursing department. It's kind of like or having, like having taken a paracetamol kind of thing. So it's probably an impact. We've got a constantly more challenging demographic. So we've got an older population with more. So a lot of this is going to depend on what this place is like. What's the flu like? What's the COVID like? What's the weather like? And what does that look like across the region? In terms of the package of initiatives, I genuinely say I don't think they've ever been as good. So I don't think I've ever seen such good, sustained clinical engagement with improvement programs. That's what really. So you've got general medical staff and emergency department consultants actually talking about data and stats and how their departments are performing and they care about it. It's those kind of things that really make the difference. So we're in as fit a position as we can be, but more work to do.
Thank you. Very positive. It's nice to hear positivity around this subject, which is obviously one of our most thorny subjects across the
Sorry, I just get some assurance in terms of our longer term service offer? Can you just reassure us that part of it is waiting well? Because for me, that's what we hear more from patients. They are so focused on the diagnosis and getting it assessed that sometimes we are missing the waiting well aspect. And I just get an assurance that that's
We've done a reasonable amount of work on the front. So we've updated our neurodiversity portal. So we've got signposting now to a single website that gives all of the local organisations that they've got. We've waited well and we've written out to all to hopefully available. Personally, telephone. Everything waiting over 1 week down to whatever to be graded now with a phone call saying, do something, says what your difficulties now. We're continuously re-triaging And so as people contact us saying there's been a change in our child's presentation, that's reconsidered by the team. And we make considerations, is this child's appointment moving in the priority list or forward? So that's something that happens on a daily basis. It's never going to be perfect, it's always too long. But we're satisfied that we're doing what we can. It's also an area that's overseen by the same board, so it's something we have to provide to ensure it's off.
Thank you, Matthew. And I think you can see from Sue's report and Matthew's report a huge amount of activity going on, and some good stuff as well. I mean, in Matthew's report there, inappropriate out of area placements, CAMS, the UCR service has been a success from day one, to be honest, and that's not seen across the country. When you look at the figures in that report, the prevention of conveyance to the ED, which is a massive part of relieving pressure, we've had huge success from day one, more or less, Matthew, I think it's fair to say. So that report contains some good stuff, so thank you and the team for that. Can we note Matthew's report, please? Yes, thank you, and we move on. Scott, quick update on the improvement plan. Scott.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the report is presented here, and it brings together information which has been through Quality and Safety and People and Culture Committee. As a reminder, the improvement plan responds to feedback from staff about what it was like to work in the organisations. Those 1,000 voices really shaped the improvement plan. During the previous financial year, there was a strong focus on development of offers and approaches in response to that feedback, and then a move towards embedding. This financial year has been a lot about further embedding, but really make sure we've got those management systems and processes in place to ensure we've got oversight of the change and staff have got that further ability to provide feedback. Some of the key things I really wanted to draw out, colleagues will remember that we have the Pulse dashboard, which we use to monitor the impact of our work. And as you'll see, we do have a position with an SPC plot that shows we are having the impact we wanted. So the actions we are taking to improve culture and the trust are now providing demonstrable impact. Certainly not complacent, though, and want to go further faster. Some of the key ways we're doing that, which I'll pull out, is really pleased with the progress of a number of the training offers, which we're seeing staff feedback around the culture of the organisation. So compassionate, inclusive training, facilitative conversations, active bystander training, the managing and leading together programme, as well as the resolution approach. These are some of the approaches and tools that we're using to support people to build the skills, test the skills, and create the environment where at that local team level, people are able to resolve concerns at an earlier stage and ensure they don't become endemic. Another big area of development has been the integrated governance structures, which Matthew and Natalie chair. There's been an awful lot of development work there, really again picking up on some of the CQC findings, but also the feedback from staff, and it's providing the mechanism for how we operate in a way which is that naturally aligns to the Care Quality Commission statements. The kind of things we've been doing there is significant training and development sessions with our Band 7 team leads, so about how they run their meetings, how they receive assurance, and we are currently working with the service leads as to what is it we want them to do through integrated governance, really picking up on staff feedback, making sure they understand the quality of their services, and make sure that both conversations are happening at the right levels, the right risks are being managed at the right levels. Just finally, I'd like to highlight the progress being made. We committed to corporate updates around the HRT, performance and informatics approach, and the approach to comms in the trust. All of those are progressing in line with the programme signed off by board, and going through the relevant trade change processes and training processes there, but that will give far greater reach into the operational teams through a business partner model. So we really start to make sure the teams get the HR support they information they support they need, and the communications flow up and down the organisation. Final bit, National Staff Survey. As you'll know, this year we used a different approach of making sure the National Staff Survey was held through plans at a local level. We had an extraordinary People and Culture Committee where our operational corporate leads provided feedback about what plans they were going to be undertaking. The success of those we shared with staff at a Let's Talk in September, just before the next phase, the next staff survey opens. We made fantastic progress last year, particularly in terms of line management, recommend the carer, and also recommends a place to work. Again, we hope to see that progress continuing this year. I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Scott. All these, as you indicated, these have been coming up through our committees, notably Janet's committee and Venus on much of the culture stuff. Does anybody have any questions? I know we're relatively well versed. Janet?
It's just a question. Leadership. Obviously, we had a session on this, didn't we, at the last time? It's really impressive. And I know here you say that all the places put more on. So my question was, when do we anticipate that all the relevant staff will be? It is a very impressive training.
It is. So they have another 8 sessions now gone onto ESR, and those are, again, they are booking up very, very fast. And there's a mixture of 2-day sessions for managers, leaders and supervisors, and 1-day all-staff sessions. So they're all proving really popular. When we say everybody being these through, this is going to be a continuous piece of work and continually evolving. All of this is going to flow through our Next Trust strategy. But a lot of these programs, they are continuous offers. There's individual work with specific teams where there may be needed a bit more focused input. But I'd say all the managers, leaders, supervisors, we're looking at probably another 12-month period till everybody's had the opportunity to go on those.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Scott. If we look at the evidence we have before us around, you've all seen the charts there, I think, on Diligent 92, 93, 94, those sorts of areas. We are changing the dials. And I think we are now at the point where we have to be very careful in that our leaders, people around this table and the people that work for you, we need to keep the focus where it should be so we don't fall back, so to speak. Because you can see from the evidence coming forward that we are making improvements. The reaction certainly to the training programme for managers is very positive. I've had positive feedback. And I just reiterate to colleagues around this table and for your sub-team leaders, we need to keep the focus as we have done over the last 12 months to make sure that improvement is not only continued but is also sustainable and these things become business as normal. But thank you for that update, Scott, and congratulations to the executive team for what we've been driven through now for a period of probably 12 months. It's making the difference as we anticipated and hoped it would. It's actually showing that now, so thank you to everybody for that. Can we note Scott's report? Thank you, Scott. We can note that and move on, please, to Matthew and the Community Mental Health Services Review.
So, one of the tragic events in Nottingham in February 2024, the HSE launched a self-assessment exercise to test the adequacy of local responses to patients who are at risk of disengagement. So all trusts undertook a self-assessment through what's called the Mental Health Maturity Index, which we completed in September 2020. So all trusts and ICBs have now been required to develop a plan to address key areas that were identified through the Mental Health Maturity Index. All trusts and ICBs have to have the plan signed off by trust boards, ICB boards, and by the end of the form. As part of the end of the form, we can talk through this with ICB and then get evidence of how our trust board rounds and ICB board rounds run that July is open for submission. The paper submitted has already been scrutinised and approved by QNS UK with the Associate Director of the Service and answer detailed questions. So just in brief, This is a 2-year plan, a substantial plan, so with a focus on identifying advanced engagement needs, developing a local approach to meeting those needs, updating risk and safety planning, ensuring legislative compliance, and building new relationships with partner agencies, housing, substance abuse, and social care. So those are the core areas of the plan. There's a detailed plan on working through this with a program manager and service users and the full range of clinician partners expect program group. At present, there's no new NHS resource to implement. When we submitted the original maturity index, we were asked for an indicative figure that would be adequate to roll out a full assertive outreach approach in Worcestershire. We put in $500,000 around the national benchmark for. But there's no money for this method. So this is our best approach to assertive engagement. So it will not be a full assertive outreach model in Worcestershire, but in Herefordshire you already have a full assertive outreach team, so we're improving that's our approach to be as assertive as the board's asked to endorse the plan, which is also being presented to ICB board tomorrow.
Thank you, Matthew. And this has been through your committee, Janet, and the tyres kick, so to speak. Any questions at all? Beach?
Just for clarity, that limited assertive model is purely a financial. If we had more money, we'd be able to do a full outreach. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that that's something that's nationally recognised. We've spoken to other trusts in the area about how are you doing this, and the approach is generally around the same, which is to say, identify the care model, look at what you can do. So for us, that's going to be we've started some of this already, setting up assertive clinics with dedicated staff with an interest in this area. Dedicated small caseload, they're seeing a lot more frequently and a lot more assertively than doing otherwise.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the board aware that the ICB discussion was actually yesterday. So I did flag in the meeting when I presented the paper that the ICB board members, as we need to be aware, needed to be aware that this did not deliver full assertive outreach model. We were not saying we can deliver a full assertive outreach model within existing resources, that we would keep the resources position under review and would recognise that there may need to be a discussion as part of the, I think about which year it would be now, scarily 26-27 financial planning round discussions that would enter that prioritisation process if we felt that it needed to do so at that point in time. That was accepted by the ICB board yesterday.
Yeah, so I suppose it's just to clarify, Matthew, that obviously we've been working with our West Midlands counterparts around specialist beds that sit in the forensic space, and they've done a lot of work to reduce the current bed base, which has released money back into community services. So some of that then really does support some of the local work we're doing here. We've seen some early gains with some money passing through to put in more forensic capacity, which we have a really finite amount of across the 2 counties. And actually, if they carry on with their trajectory, that should move more money into this pathway. But obviously, at the moment, that quantum's unknown. But I thought it probably important to highlight that the forensic overlay here is really important, and we've not had a lot from our West Midlands offer for a number of years, and that is starting to change.
You think, can we note the programme of work and the activities within Matthew's report, please? You may have seen me receive instructions. We need to endorse as set out in the paper, the I see nods all around the table. Thank you. It's always useful to have the word in here to make sure keep you on the straight and narrow. Thank you. So that's endorsed, Matthew. Thank you very much. If we move on now to, I should have welcomed back at the beginning of the meeting, who's stepping into Robert's stead, who is away on personal matters, as we know. I'm so used to seeing you sitting around the table, Denise, in the past, that I forgot to welcome you back. But so welcome back, and hand over to you for our performance management framework.
It's a performance management framework. It is a national document. The scope and focus of the framework is to ensure the organisation delivers against key local metrics. So the detail is in the report. All organisations do need to have a performance framework. It's revised every year, and there's quite a number of elements detailed in the report. It is a standard document. It also describes the governance processes that we need to have in place. We have thoroughly reviewed work, and we are working on a revised performance report to support the framework. That will go to our Finance and Performance Committee. And just to say, the NHS oversight framework, the details not in the report, but as Ellen alluded to, since the time of writing the report, that has been released. We are working through the detail of the new NOF. Principles are still the same, but we have been told that for Q1 we will be in segment 2. That will be our published result. As you know, in more details, there are 5 segments, and we will be in segment 2 for Q1. And that's all I wanted to highlight.
Okay, thank you, Denise. I've got Sue showing first. Sue.
I think there's a point of detail. On page 186, it says the CQC committee met to survey satisfaction rates according to safety, but later on in another report, it says it's exclusive finance. So it just needs to work out where it sits.
That's two things.
Yeah, but we'll check that.
We'll have that one checked out. Peach and I actually ended up having a conversation about what the whole thing was called. I think in these committee meetings, it does oscillate on occasions what the terminology.
Yes.
Has anybody else got any points at all? Peach, I don't know if you wish to say, this came through your committee, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And as Denise already said, we're working, we're reporting on performance. Call it off on a page if you like. Because at the moment it can be a very extensive report, and you're really looking very hard to find the detail that matters. So I think the improvements will be really welcome. Thank you.
Right, if there's nobody else showing, can we approve the performance management framework as set out by Denise, and we'll see it in operation through the next 12 months. So we'll go through another refresh and look at it. Thank you very much, Denise. So we can approve that and move on to the refresh of our green plan. Denise again.
Thank you. So, yeah, the title, it is a refresh, not a full rewrite. We were asked to produce something simple, but with more trust and local context. It was ICS agreed templated format, so that all the ICS plans follow a similar look and feel. We have had 360 feedback with the ICB. You know, we fed into theirs, they fed into ours. I think was actually the trust plan looked good. That's good to hear. All ICS partners have shared their draft plans with each other to enable alignment of key objectives. And trust leads internally in the organisation have all been involved in developing the plans and have signed off the relevant sections. Just to note, there are 9 key focus areas, and there are key actions defined predominantly by NHS England for the greener roadmaps, such as estates, travel and transport, food and nutrition, procurement, waste and medicines management. Just to note, if the board does approve the plan, the next steps would be we have to send a copy to the regional team and the ICB by the 31st of July. And we are instructed to publish that on our trust website by the 31st of October. We're hopeful that we'll
publishing that as soon as possible. But just to know, we will be doing a focus on session in August, and actions have already started and progressed on 25-26 action plan.
Thank you, Denise. Janet, first, please.
Yeah, it's really good to see you such. It's really interesting, and I like the so my question was about the KPIs. I noticed that Fergus was studying KPIs, and it was just to ask. Obviously, this is a high-level plan, but underneath that, do we actually have targets? So, for example, we've got like the number of clinical pathways reviewed or whatever. Do we actually have targets for that?
Yes, we do. It's very, very detailed, and Janet plans below the line. And yes, there are targets agreed with the areas, just to make sure that they have the exit.
Can I just ask, where do we get that from first? You know, how we do.
So we've got the Net Zero Programme Board, and we do feedback to them. But we'll make sure that some more of those targets are the more rapid.
I mean, I'd be really interested to see.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, say something about your committee, because I know you received this. You received this plan with your endorsement already.
So say special thanks to Robert Melby. It's a lot of time and energy into the subject matter. Knows it really well and has delivered, I think, a very good.
Thank you, Beach. And it's pleasing, Denise, to hear how across the ICB, how you and the team are all working together with others to make sure we're all aiming in the same direction for the same thing, which is the way it should be, of course. But yeah, good. And as we know, this is a refresh plan at this moment in time. Can we, on that basis, can we then please endorse and agree this refresh plan, please? Because I know Denise then has to submit as indicated. Yes, that's agreed by board. Thank you very much. And before we have a break, we then move to Integrated Care System Joint Forward Plan. So,
document. So this is about the refresh for 24, 25, 26 for the Joint Forward Plan. There's guidance that says this needs to be updated at the beginning of each financial year and then goes through the boards, which is currently what's happening this week. So just to highlight, the cover sheet does that well. This is really picking up the updates around strategic priorities. It's including now the Building Sustainable Future programme, which wasn't in the original Joint Forward Plan. It picks up the performance at the year end of 24-25, some additions to population health management, how that's going to be done, governance, and then obviously updates around the money and sort of performance trajectories. And we've been asked today to.
Okay, nice, short, sweet. Anybody shy at all? Are we happy to endorse? Because I know this has gone around the houses again, and I'm happy to endorse. They've even put my photograph in it. I know it's I must be happy to endorse as chair. Yeah. But yes, it's a continue. This plan, like many of them, it continues to iterate as we go through the years. To be honest, and I know that Sue works very closely with our ICB and colleagues in other trusts on this one. Can we endorse them, please? So ICB can publish. Thank you very much. That's endorsed by this board. So Sue, get the message back to ICB, please, on our behalf. Ellen, so I'm between.
Yeah.
Okay, colleagues, if we have a break now, please, and can we come back together at 5 to